record in the cloud. And so we have Erica or Andrea, so far it's you. This may be a private session just for you.
She walked away.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't start till 10, right? There's still 5 more.
Okay. And then Frankie is putting in the chat, I believe, also your
yes, I just did that.
slides. Okay, the slides. And so yeah, we're wondering if you've used anything from the last 3 sessions. If since you've been learning these things, have you been able to use anything from the first 3 sessions? And we'll give a few minutes to get everybody in. We're so excited to see everyone. Thank you for coming back. We've really enjoyed these sessions with you guys. We should probably, Sarah, we should probably make a special certificate. I don't know what the certificate would say, but.
How about a sticker?
Ah.
A certificate or a badge.
A badge.
Oh, e-badges.
Yeah, we can figure out how to do that.
Like for completing the sessions, these?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been good for us to do these too, you guys, because it helps us operationalize, you know, what you need. And you know, we've done a couple staff meetings since we started working with you guys, and we know that we need to make big changes to how we approach staff meetings. So we're thinking through that. So thank you for the 2 schools that let us, who are our guinea pigs. We know each session we've made an adjustment, and we think we know what to do now to make them better. So just in the chat, you know, have you used anything? We're interested to know if you've used anything. And then I'm going to go ahead, if people will help us, since it's 10:01, if people will help me keep admitting people. And so just in the chat, what are some things, have you used any of, we're excited to know if you've used any of the materials or supports that we've been showing you those first 3 sessions. So if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat for us, any ways of any of the materials you've used from our first 3 sessions. And then we have our parking lot. And so you're welcome to put anything there. I can't remember if it was this parking lot or elementary teacher parking lot, but there was a question and we did put an answer in an orange Post-it note. Now I can't remember whose parking lot that was, because we do look at those frequently to support you guys. So today we want to work with you guys on practicing using resources to verify rubrics and assessment alignment. We'd also like to give you some look fors. So what are some things that you could look for that might signal to you that your staff need support? We don't, and we want you to know that we can partner in that support. So some of the supports we're going to show you, you know, our department could offer that kind of support, and maybe if you're not a science person, you may not be able to. So just remember, we're here to help you with that. And then just also, we're interested to know how you have reflective conversations and what those might look like relative to NDSS and what we're working on with our science staff. And just a reminder that we are doing the best we can with those common assessments. The schedules are there for you for elementary and for secondary, and continue to support you guys. So what's in the chat? What have folks been using?
We've added some action steps to our integrated curriculum SIP goal based on these sessions. Discussion with staff on 3D assessments and rubrics. Past information to teachers, but haven't had a chance to discuss yet. Students coming back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had mentioned earlier that a couple of people have invited our staff to their SIP meeting or to their staff meeting. And I want to thank those two principals for taking a chance on us. I think we did a lot of reflecting after those sessions were over, and there's a lot of things that will change about how we do that information. So we also thank you guys for that opportunity, because it helps us stay fresh. And it helps us also modify what we're doing so we can get little bits of information to all of our staff very quickly. Because, you know, those staff meetings, it's tough. I remember you work all day, and especially in this environment. And, you know, at the end of the day, you want something quick, and you want your staff to remember, your admin to remember you're a little tired. So, so I think we learned a lot. All right, Miss Frankie.
Apologize. Can you hear me now? So this is a 3D checklist that you can use to take a look, and teachers can use to take a look at their assessments and make sure they're aligned to 3 dimensions. Assessments are evidence of student learning. So we want to look for evidence of student learning in the science and engineering practices, in the DCI, the content information, as well as in the cross-cutting concepts. So there are 5 essential things that we look for. It should be focused on a phenomenon or a problem. It should require students to engage in sense making. So anytime actually you walk into a classroom that's working on science, the student should know what they are trying to figure out. Part of NGSS, because it's based on a phenomenon or problem, students should always be trying to figure something out. So the assessment, of course, should require students to engage in sense making, making sense of the phenomenon. Require students to use both science practices and ideas. They make sense of they need to make sense to the students, and they need to support the intent and purpose of use. Anything else on that, Deb? Okay, and the next slide is this is the task screener that we developed. When I went to a conference last year, I brought back a task screener, and we looked at that task screener and we adapted it for our needs. And so this is a screener that teachers and principals, administration can use to evaluate the summative assessments that are being used. I won't go through and read through all of them. Very similar to the 5 things that I mentioned on the previous slide. Oh, and there's also a link to it there at the bottom of the screen. There's a link to the actual one. So if you wanted to print those out and share them with teachers or send them to teachers, there's a link to the actual one.
And we put it in the chat for you as well just now. If you don't have it, let us know, and we'll send you both the slides and the screener, because we actually are going to have you guys using the screener. So we'd like you to open the screener link. I don't know if we want to send that one more time, because we've had some people just recently enter, but the slide deck, more importantly right now, would be the screener, because we want you guys to actually practice using the screener. So just to remind everybody, the standard that we've been working on, and as a department, we've decided that this is the standard, that we're going to use this every example, pre-K through 12, anytime we're talking to families, anytime we're talking to an admin, anytime we're talking to teachers, so that we all have an example of what it's supposed to look like, and then we can modify our help for each of those individual groups in another way. So just a reminder, we have been looking at LS1-2, read text and use media to determine patterns in the behavior of parents and offspring that help offspring survive. And then we've got this rubric, and we've gone through the process of showing you the different colors, and the colors relate to the 3 dimensions. Blue is our science and engineering practice, or our cross-cutting concepts, which in this case are patterns. And so just a reminder of what we've been working on. So now what we would like you guys to do is open up that task screener. Does everybody have it open on a screen? I'm going to open the activity that we did. And what I'd like, just to remind us about what the activity was, And then let's go through each of those and decide how we think this performance assessment would rate. So if you remember, there was some text with a video clip about cardinals and how cardinal parents and chicks signal to each other in order to signal that they're hungry, and that we provided a graphic organizer. So our phenomenon was the cardinal, the parents actually feeding the chicks. And what we were looking for was offspring and parent signals. So offspring signal, parent response, and how those signal the parent. So that's just a reminder of the activity we did. So if we look through the actual screener, and now you can unmute or you can put in the chat, here's our screener. And this screener is a little bit confusing to people the first time they use that. We thought we were super clear, and then the first time we used it with our district science team, it didn't go very well. But it's set up as a series of questions. So question 1 is there a phenomenon or problem driving the task? So what do you guys think? If we're looking just at question 1 in that example that we showed, is there a phenomenon or a problem driving the task? Would you say yes or no?
I'm seeing yeses in the chat.
Awesome. And so your staff then would click the X. Now, if they clicked no, the red flag is supposed to be a signal that, oh, hey, I need to stop and I need to make sure that's put in there. That's why that flag is there. We confused a lot of people. We thought we were being so cute, but at any rate, that's what that flag means. So if yes, what is it? If no, can it be added? We are not saying that staff has to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You've got this performance task of some sort ready to go. What can we do to it to add a phenomenon that students would be explaining? And we'll give you another example of that in the session as well. So question 2, can the majority of the task be answered without using the information provided by the task scenario? Can the majority of the task be answered without using information in the task scenario? So in other words, do they have to think about what they know to solve the scenario? Yes or no there? So is it rote memory, I guess? And that gets to our question 3. Was that task, could a student solve that task from just rote memory? So was there a lot of multiple choice? Was there a lot of vocab they had to memorize?
That's what
So the students' background knowledge from the chat.
As well
Go ahead,
as
Andrea.
they know that if it's about a specific animal, or they can talk about it in general.
They can, exactly. Yes, right. And so there we've got a red flag to signal to our staff, okay, if this is a red flag, and it might be even just a section, right? Maybe the majority of what we put together was good, but there was just a section. There's a space there that we could give that note and then ask the staff to go back and revise that section or look at that section. Number 4, does the majority of the task require students to use reasoning to successfully complete the task? So are they using those upper level skills to be able to the signal, the response, and how the baby survives? And then does the task require students to use some understanding of disciplinary core ideas instead of to successfully complete it? So, and then what is the DCI that's being covered? Because I think part of what people think is that we're saying don't teach any content, but what we're saying is we still need to teach some content, but can they apply that content? They still have to know the offspring signal and what that means, and they still have to know what a parent response is in order to answer that question, and that's my content. Question 6, do students have at least one science engineering practice that you use one to successfully complete the task? And then are the are the dimensions assessed separately in a major task? So what we mean here is, are there questions so that we're just asking questions about the pattern, just asking questions about the science engineering practice, and that they're separate from each other? Or are we asking kids to combine all those three things? We want them to be combining all those three things. We don't want to be pulling them apart separately on our assessments. And is the task coherent and comprehensible from the student perspective? And then based on the assessment needs, the task purpose recorded above, make any kind of recommendation. So this is the form that, and unfortunately with COVID, we had just started using this form with our district science team. In January, we were having them look through January and February at all of their common assessments and using this to make those analysis and setting themselves up. We've collected those, setting themselves up to make the adjustments to the common assessments 1 and 2 using this task, a screener. And then of course, now we haven't been able to get back together. But this is still a task screener that you could potentially use with your staff to work them through assessments that they are developing, or maybe give them this as on the front end as, hey, here are some things to think about when you are designing those. So is there anybody have any comments or questions about the task screener? What do you think? So did our task overall, I guess, let's just say overall, did our task fit the needs, or did you guys see anything that you might red flag us on? Feel free to red flag us. Was there anything on there you felt like we needed to improve on our assessment? Because even if we think we're an expert, we can always make it better, right? No, nothing, Frankie, everybody? Okay, all right, well, that's okay.
It would be nice to use with staff. The process of reviewing and assessing will help them fully understand.
Yeah. And I know we're trying to build tools that help you guys to have conversations, but also PLCs have conversations. That's one of the things that we're trying to develop, is a way to support PLCs to have these kind of conversations, and then be able to reach out to us if they need help or support. Okay, so in the chat, another tool that you have at your disposal in elementary, I'm not sure how much you're using Canvas. So that's just my ignorance. But at any rate, here are, we got a request to support a teacher. And this was initiated by both the teacher and the admin. So this was a joint venture. They both wanted support for each other. And so the first stop I made was Canvas. I went into the Canvas account and I just took some screenshots. So either unmiking or in the chat, what questions do you have about these things we pulled from Canvas? What questions or comments do you have about what we pulled on Canvas? You can unmute or put it in the chat. What questions do you have looking at this Canvas?
Was there something specific you were looking for?
That's a really great question. Thank you for that. Let me back up.
Like, I don't know what like lens to look through this at.
Gotcha. Okay. So the reason I was looking at the Canvas account was the teacher and the administrator, the teacher wasn't clear on how to do SBLA. They weren't sure, they are struggling with, how to make rubrics. What does SBLA mean? How to use those 7 guiding principles? And then also in aligning their formatives and summatives, to the curriculum. So those are the 2 things I was sort of looking for, was like, is this teacher following the 7 guiding principles? And also, is this teacher, does this teacher need more support aligning the curriculum to what they're teaching? Does that help, Peggy?
Yeah.
There's a question here about why the safety contract, is in there with points. It has points attached to it. you know.
Awesome. Does the person who noticed that, do you guys want to unmic and talk about that? Because that was one question I had too. But why is that a question? Why would I want to?
Because because in Infinite Campus now, there is the safety contract. You need to go over safety whenever you do labs, but it shouldn't, it's more towards the old school, and it's not really, it doesn't, it should be something, safety is something in science that should be taught throughout. It should be taught throughout. It's embedded within the practices, science and engineering practices.
Perfect. Yeah. And so while as a teacher who taught lab, I would probably want to make sure that my students have gone through the safety contract information, right? That's something that's important. It looks to me like maybe this teacher is, for a compliance reason, right? They're assigning a point to it. So the kids get an easy point. But we don't do that in SBLA. That is violation of our SBLA policies, because signing the safety contract, what standard is that linked to? Right. So if it's not linked to a standard, therefore it is not embedded in a rubric, and therefore now we're using it as a summative. And so that definitely was I just wanted some more information as to why the teacher, it turned out that, again, it was a compliance thing. The teacher thought if they didn't give the kid a point, they wouldn't turn in the contract. And so we just talked about some other ways that they could maybe, get the contract back. But we mainly said, do you have to worry about that right now? Like maybe knowing who the kids are that turn it in, because we were all distance, we're not sure when we're going to go back to, we really don't need this until we're back face-to-face doing lab. So that's perfect. Any other things on there along that lens that you notice in here that you might have questions about?
There's one about what standard are they connected to?
Yeah, what standard?
What type of support's needed? If you look at the points too, the 3, the 1, the 3, the 3, the 4.
Yeah, so that was my question too, was, well, first of all, are these formatives, are they summatives? If they're summatives, they shouldn't be worth 3 points. Right, because every summative has to give kids opportunity on the full rubric, which means it would be 4 points. So, why are some of your, I'm not sure if these are formatives or summatives, worth 3 points? I think there is some confusion and keep going back between a rubric and points. Like as a teacher, I would put something as 3 points. I might tell my class that's because this formative would only assess up to the 3. So like I could understand putting that in, but do you guys see the confusion in that? And so that's a district-wide, I think, issue we have with how do we communicate, points when really it's related to a rubric. And I think we still need to work on that. So in that case, it could be sort of a violation, or it might not be. It might just be, a communication thing that we as a district need to work on. Any other questions about it? Because I wonder the same thing. I'm seeing all these different points.
Where is the work for the sheet, and where do they come within a lesson or unit?
So are they? So now we're wanting to know: is it really connected to the standard, and is it really aligned? Why do we have 2 different sheets, and what are these sheets? Sheet 3, sheet 4. Yeah, you guys are really good at that. Those were the same kind of questions I had. Any other questions you guys might have?
What is the activity for parts of the sun, summative or formative?
Yeah. And I think, again, it's one of those things where it may make perfect sense to the teacher and to the kids because the way it's talked in the context of the course. So it might be perfectly fine. It might actually, the descriptor might make it easier for the teacher to communicate with the kids. But just, from an outside perspective, I'm not clear on what it is that we're doing. Unless there's one other thing. Was there one other question, Frankie? Are we good?
Where was there guidance on the teacher's Canvas homepage that described the details of these assignments?
Right. Yep. Yeah. And that's where I want to take you guys next. And I don't want to overwhelm you guys with this, because this part is easy for our staff to do because we are in NGSS, we're engrossed in NGSS all the time. But the second I saw parts of the sun, I knew that that's nowhere in the curriculum. Like the second I saw that, I was like, that's not the curriculum. Now that doesn't mean that it wasn't being used as a phenomenon to kick off. I don't know, but that's what we wanted to find out. So I've developed this. Do we want to put this in the chat so people can see this for themselves, if you don't mind, Frankie?
Sure.
So when I'm showing you this, I don't want you to think this is something I would expect you to do. What I want you to know is if you or a teacher ask us for assistance and we go into Canvas, this is the process we would use. And so we just want to show it to you. And we can be your partners in that, so that if you, this is an actual process I went through to support a teacher and an administrator. And so the first thing that I had questions about was what was supposed to be taught, because I saw that parts of the sun and I saw a sun assessment and in the Canvas account. And I know that neither of those are in the curriculum for what this course was. So there are links here to those two, and I'm going to actually, they're pulled out in this document further, but if you want to see them, they're there. And then I said to myself, well, what resources do I have to help me determine whether or not parts of the sun are in the curriculum for this particular grade level? And so I pulled the evidence statement. I pulled the U46 task screener, which we just showed you guys. And then I also got my grade bands out of NGSS ready to go, so that I had them all there to help me determine whether or not this was something that was in the curriculum, or if I should have a conversation with this teacher about, like, tell me again why you taught this. So I decided to start with the rubric. So I'm just going to let this rubric project for a second, okay? And the standard is MS12. It's right here. It's kind of embedded. I should have done something to make this better, but it's right here. Develop and use a model to describe the role of gravity in the motions within galaxies and the solar system. That's the standard. So if that's the standard and we're looking at the rubric that was provided right away as an administrator, what stands out to you? Like right away, what would be the first thing you might ask? Thanks, Frankie. Should I just tell you? Well, when I look at this, the standard should be the 3. The standard should be the 3. So when I see this, develop and use a model to describe the role of gravity and the motions within galaxies and the solar system, that should be my 3. Now, it might be more student friendly, like the teacher might alter it so that it's more student friendly, and that's fine. But when I look at this 3, I'm seeing gravitational forces and I'm seeing sun. And I am not seeing the embedment of that standard in it. The other thing I'm not, another question I have is, do you guys see the 3 dimensions throughout this rubric? So if you were to color the science and engineering practice, where is it? Is it, I see model, I see construct and explanation, I see label, develop and label completely some level. I guess that must be a model, right? I see a little switching of science engineering practice, which, that might not be so bad. But I have some questions about this rubric related to the standard itself. So that's the first thing that I would want to talk to my teacher about. And so how I set this up is the questions I would ask. You might have questions too. So that was the first thing. So then I wanted to look at the DCI levels to see if the sun was actually in the DCI. So here I pulled from the grade level bands, I just copied and pasted the DCI is ESS 1A, ESS 1B. It happens to be middle school. So I'm focused here. So my content is the solar system is part of the Milky Way, which is in one of the many billion galaxies. And the solar system contains many varied objects held together by gravity. Solar system models explain and predict eclipses, lunar sun phases. So then I go back to the part about the sun. And now these are my 3 questions that I would want to know. You know, is it about the sun or is it more about the solar system being held together? You know, I might encourage the teachers, since they've done so much work on the sun, because for sure it's held together by gravity. Is that right, Peggy?
Yes.
Peggy's got a lot of, okay. So we could, maybe our team, right, Peggy. So maybe our team could work with this teacher. If they're really into the sun, they might really be into the sun. It might be like something really cool that they just love. So our team would then go through and say, well, can we help them with the sun being a phenomenon to help students make sense of how gravity works to hold things together in space, right? But we would discourage them then from making the entire, you know, summative and formative about the sun, because that's not what's being tested. Okay, so then the next thing I would look at is the assessment against the rubric. And I'd want to look at the formatives and I'd want to look at the summatives. So here's the rubric, okay? Here's the formative. And by the way, this was the only formative for the summative. It's a picture of the sun, as you can see here. I'm assuming these are like label lines where they'd label, and it says identify each of the parts of the sun and give as much information about each. You may need to use an additional page. So I'm just going to stop there, unmuting or in the chat. What are your thoughts about this activity? First of all, just in general, this formative, and your thoughts of it relative to the rubric. Because we're supposed to be using the rubric to plan this, right? So just the rubric, even if we don't fix the rubric, what are your thoughts about this activity with this rubric? You can unmute or you can chat. What do you guys think? What question might you ask your staff member about it? Is there a question of a collaborative conversation question you might ask?
Well, I think that labeling the parts of the sun and sharing, you know, what those different vocabulary words, if you will, mean doesn't really tell me about the gravitational forces that produce sun's light. And that's number 3.
Yeah.
It is not matching what the activity is doing.
Perfect. And you know what? The teacher may say, but they need to have this vocabulary to be able to do that. And that's cool. You know, but my, you know, you're exactly right. Like, how does this really support the kid move across in the support of mastering this rubric as written, as the rubric is written? Anything else?
Yeah, somebody asked put in there the question, how does this activity fully align with the standard?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Doesn't.
Right.
And my question is, are the students really developing? Because it looks like the model was given to them. They're just labeling.
Yeah, how fast can I Google this image and copy the words onto this piece of paper?
Yeah. And from an interest perspective, you know, it was interesting because the conversation I had with this teacher, he said, yeah, the kids all got it right. And usually they don't. They must have just Googled it. And it was really hard for me. It was really hard for me because I was like, well, yeah, I would have Googled it too. I could probably find this exact image, right? And so those are some of the things that, you know, that we really want to start having in these collaborative conversations. And I think it's tricky sometimes, right? Sometimes it's hard to have these conversations because you see it And maybe they don't see it, or maybe they do see it and they're just in survival mode right now. Right? I mean, it's really hard right now to have some of these conversations that we're having, but I think we still have to have these conversations, because I'm not sure that my kids, my students would be motivated to do this formative. And we hear that all the time. They're not turning in formatives. They're not turning in formatives. They're not turning in formatives. Well, how does the formative relate to what you need them to do? Right? And you guys are right. As a kid, I don't have to have this formative done to be able to do the three. They don't relate to each other. So I'm not sure that I should be held accountable for, not doing that. Anything else about that formative? You guys are really good at this. You guys have a very good eye.
I want to add that there's something sort of alarming in the DCI that this person added to the level 3 about gravity causing light, which is wrong. It's not true. So I understand that not every teacher is an expert in earth and space sciences, and gravity is actually something that a lot of adults are confused on. And if there's ever confusion, I think I speak for the entire staff here, like Deb McMullen is a limnologist. You guys don't know this. I didn't know it until last week. I didn't even know what it was when she said it. But every single one of us can either are or can guide you to specific content experts to make sure that the teacher has the content correct before they start trying to develop formatives, because sometimes that is the problem, because not every single gen ed teacher is a science specialist. And I'm thinking like an elementary teacher, when they get their certificate, they do a little ditty on science. And it's okay to not know. And it's okay to contact us for a little help with that expertise to make sure that they're on the right track. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to check and make sure that the content is correct.
Yeah, for sure. And so and thinking back to this, to help my teacher, I might, I would just want to have this conversation that we're having, but I might actually have them start with their rubric, and I might have them go through the process of color coding first, the blue, the green, the orange, and then having them check the blue, the green, the orange against the evidence statement. Like, is it in there? In the hopes that they might go, oh, it's not about the sun. The standard is not about the sun. There's no, it's about gravity and gravitational forces. And that might trigger for them to go, oh, I need to change this whole thing. So then let's look at the summative. Okay, so the summative, when I pulled the summative, and you guys have access to a copy of it, there's 2 questions. The first question is, develop a graphic model of the atmosphere and surface layers of the sun. The model must include 3 surface layers and 3 atmospheric layers of the sun, and 2 additional facts about each layer. And then question 2 is, use your model of the atmospheric and surface layers of the sun to explain how gravity is the force behind the sun's production of heat and light. Before we even compare this to the rubric, the first thing I want to ask you guys is, because this would be the very first question for my teacher, would be, tell me how this formative helps the students answer either of these 2 questions. That right there is my first question. Why? Why do I want to know? This is the only formative the teacher provided for the students to be able to answer these 2 questions. Why is that my starting point? Not even looking at the rubric. Maybe I'm not asking the question well enough. I've been known to do that. Should I ask it differently, Frankie? What should I ask?
Yes, ask it differently.
So maybe it's not it's just so blunt that maybe there's no explanation, but.
Hey, Debbie, it's Amy. You know what? One of the things I think I would ask first is, did the teacher have any other formative assessments? was it, was it a visual thing? Was it an activity they did in class? Did they walk around with a checklist, marking off students who she saw understood another concept, another part of it? Because it just might not be in the Canvas course. So
Yeah.
I think first.
I totally agree with you. And that's what I was trying to aim at, is like, was this really the only formative? Because if it was, I don't know how kids could be successful on this summative, if that really was. And you're exactly right. I'm hoping the teacher will be like, oh, I did this and this and this and this, and they've got like 12 things that they did, but just didn't bother to load into Canvas. Because I understand that whole thing too, right? That's hard too to do. Yes, that's perfect. And I think that's such a nice way to approach it from a positive intent kind of background, which I think helps. So if I look at these questions though, for summative 1 and 2, for the question 1 and 2, some questions that I have about this summative, which parts of the rubric does the first question capture the student evidence? I think this question may only capture lower rigor information. So I'd want to word that differently, I think, but my question is kind of like, it only is, I don't know that we're progressing through a 3 here. Like, I don't know if the student is going to be able to capture enough evidence to show me a 3 here with what questions we're asking. And then my other question is, I don't see the 4. So the 4 is student meets level 3 requirements and can construct an explanation using evidence from their model to correct misconceptions of another model, right? And so when I look at the 2 questions of my summative, I actually don't see a question 4. And so I don't, and so it's going with the same thing, Amy, like, did you have a different question? Did you handle it in a different way? One of the things that we need to be careful that we're really monitoring our teachers about is that some kids are not getting access to the 4 unless they show mastery of a 3. And we want to make sure that we're telling teachers that we don't make that decision for a kid. We give them access to the entire rubric every single time that we're taking summative data. We have to give them access to that. And so it could be that they just had a separate question. No, I didn't find one in Canvas, so it could be the same thing, that they did it in some other way. All right, I saw something in the chat. Was there something in the chat there, Frankie?
Rubric levels are supposed to show progression.
Yeah.
Formative will support student success on summative.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so this teacher, I feel like needs some more support on rubrics, needs some support on, well, what is the curriculum that we're teaching? And so a single point rubric might be a really great place to start this teacher off. What is the actual standard? What is the evidence statement? Let's look at the rubric that you have. Do we need to fix this rubric in any way? Making sure they can see the 3 dimensions within that rubric. And then, okay, what activities do you have? Do you really love the sun? Because we could probably figure out a way to make that the phenomenon for this particular unit. And then the last tool that we might have to be able to walk a teacher through, or we could give the teacher, that tool that you guys just used and have them go through their own summative. And so this is my evaluation of the teacher's summative. And as you can see, a lot of the red flags were raised. Some of the stuff he's got, so the SCP was there. Awesome. But how can we use some of these tools to help teachers have these conversations with their own PLCs, so that it's not us pointing these things out, but them finding those things. So we just wanted to take a minute and show you, I know like what we would actually do as a team if a teacher or a team asked us for help and support on a unit. Those are the processes or the steps that we would go through using all the tools we've been showing you over the last few days. And we just wanted to, walk you through what that process looks like. And we want to reiterate that we don't expect you guys to have, to do that. That's what our team would do, because we're science nerds and we can do all that content stuff, so we can support you. But you guys sure did a good job just using the tools that we had, which is awesome. So then here's another tool that we thought might be helpful to you guys. The stuff here on the green side of the column, this is where we want every teacher pre-K through 12 who teaches science. This is where we want them to live, in this column. And we took these from our 7 guiding principles, but we also took these from NGSS themselves and from Achieve. There are other planning tools out there. They're super complicated, but we'd be happy to share those with you that come from NGSS, that walk through a unit plan. They walk your teachers through. And what's cool is if your teams of teachers walk through these steps that NGSS and Achieve have provided in these task evaluators, NGSS awards buttons for high level examples. And right now we've got a team at South Elgin High School. We've got a teacher who's an earth and space science teacher who we've made it a goal for him to get a button. And so he's going to be walking through this process. He'd be the first button. And it's my personal goal as your science coordinator. I hope Josh isn't paying attention to this, but it's my personal goal to be the most buttoned district in the country. I want all of our teachers to be submitting to earn these buttons as high level examples of what NGSS truly looks like. And so NGSS, SBLA combined, this is where we want our teachers to live. Here's where we're finding our teachers. And so these might be questions that you could ask like a teacher to self-evaluate maybe, or a PLC team on a specific unit. And then we've given you some tools and you know to contact us and we can help people get under the screen and then also start submitting more unit plans for buttons. Are there any questions about that? I feel like I'm talking at you guys, and I also apologize for my voice being terrible. Nothing so far. Okay. So thank you. This has been so much fun for us to put this together and participate with you guys. It's fun in the monotony to talk about learning and where we want kids to be. We wanted you guys to know that on the 29th, Vince is going to have a session from 10 to 11 for our elementary folks. They're going to be looking at Unit 4, and he's going to be giving them support. And as soon as those should be loaded any moment now into Canvas catalog. We actually decided, because of you guys, we decided to switch this up, and we just decided this before the session. Originally, we were doing this 3D science and SBLA refresher only for secondary, but we're going to go ahead and open that up to elementary as well. So we're going to do the 3 weeks that we walk through with you guys. We're going to do a 90-minute session for pre-K through 12, using that first grade example again, and just walking them through all those activities so that they can see it. Right now it's listed as secondary, but we're gonna fix that. We're gonna allow 100 participants and they can be pre-K through 12, but we will be offering it from 12 to 1:30. So on the 29th, so anybody can participate in that one. And then we do have just a secondary session. It's gonna be science planning, kind of a Q&A, because they've got a few more questions about labs and things. So we'll be offering that for our secondary folks from 1:30 to 2:30. In the afternoon. And then we also want to remind you guys that the STEM Expo is March 20th. Sarah, you want to give us an update? We have quite a few schools. We have a whole second grade class. The second grade class from Lowry, woot woot to Lowry, is going to be doing a presentation. They grew radishes for their principal. It's very cool. So they're going to do their presentation on March 20th as a class. They're for the STEM Expo. So here's our registration link. We have tons of resources. We have presentations. We have videos. We have things to support people with that. And then also wanted to remind everybody the National Biodiversity Teach-In is starting next month. And so if you click this link, it's going to show you all the scientists that are there and how to register for those links. We have a pretty amazing lineup. And in fact, for the first time, the Teach-In will be sponsoring an international teacher workshop from phenomenon to storyline. It will be on endangered species, and we're featuring author, filmmaker Rick Wood. who is, he's won a ton of awards for his work, but we're going to be using his latest book, and he's going to be providing a 1-hour presentation. And again, we're going to be teaching your teachers to go from phenomenon to a storyline. They're going to participate in it as a learner, and then we'll help support them in recreating that experience for their students. So that's what we've got for you. Is there any questions? Should I stop screen sharing? Does anybody have any questions? I mean, or concerns, or no?
Deb, can I give a quick shout out to a couple schools?
Yes, please do.
So these are, as of, I think, Tuesday, I haven't checked recently, the schools that have at least a student participating in the STEM Expo or registered so far in the STEM Expo. Centennial, Clinton has 17, Creekside, Glenbrook has 10, Liberty, Nature Ridge, next page here, Spring Trail, Sunnydale, Timber Trails, Washington, Wayne, Elgin High, and Streamwood High School. Yay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, so just let us know what we can do to help support you in the STEM Expo too. We'd like a lot of people. Bye, Peggy.
Sorry, I was putting a link in the chat. Oh, am I doing STEM Expo? Shout out.
Sure.
I want to emphasize that the STEM Expo is not a science fair project necessarily. Middle school and high school, of course, can do the official science fair project to go on to regional and state and all that. But any part of the science and engineering practices that kids use can be used for a project. So they can be relatively simplistic and really focus on one science and engineering practice, or it can be a fully developed, investigation or experiment. Any way that the kids start using those practices in an intentional way accomplishes the goal of the STEM Expo.
Awesome. Sorry, my internet froze a little bit. Sarah, do you want to explain the?
Yeah, it looks like Peggy, the same thing as we were doing a couple weeks ago. The Deb and Frankie have one exit slip. Sorry, I'm fumbling on my words. That was in your PowerPoint. I tried to update the PowerPoint, but I think Deb was already displaying it. So if you do, if you're on the PowerPoint, you'll see that I've added the 2 links for the district exit slips. If not, if you're not on the PowerPoint right now, I added them, Peggy added them, and then I added them again into the chat. Once you fill out the Foursquare district eval, you'll see your CPDU, a link to your CPDU.
And then there was a question about registration. I'll put it in the, sorry, my internet is acting bizarre. I'm going to put the registration link into the chat for people too, for the STEM Expo.
And there's a video for the STEM Expo that I made that gives you more information about what it is and what it isn't and how to get this information. And I'm trying to pull it up right now.
And we've been doing presentation for classes. So teachers have been inviting us to come into the classroom and do presentations. And so we're happy to do that. We can do a brief, help students with ideas. We've also been doing, there's the registration. It's the last one that I put in there. We've also been doing about once a month. We're going to make a goal to make it once a month. We're doing just an informational. So I think we had about 15 families on Wednesday, something like that. And we just did a Q&A and it was delightful. It was so fun to hear the questions from the kids, and it was fun. Yeah.
And I'm going to put the slide deck from the STEM Expo Q&A in the chat right now. And if you just open that and then save it, it has all the links to not just registration, but more information and what the template looks like. There's a 9-slide template that the kids will download a copy of and put their answers on. And then that's what they use to present. Kind of makes it really non-threatening when they see that and realize that what they're doing is something that interests them. And then they're answering questions on this document. And that's what they're going to kind of go through to do their presentation. And it's all in the slide deck that's in the chat right now.
So that's all we have. We'll hang around if you have questions for us. We really appreciate you guys. We thank you for your faith in us in coming to these, and we hope we've been helpful, and let's continue to let us know what we can do to support you. But that's all we've got. So if you want to hang out and ask questions, please do. Otherwise, we really appreciate you. Don't forget to fill out the ISBE evaluation in the Foursquare so that you get your CPDUs. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Deb, it's Josie. So I gotta get some of my kids into the.
Okay.
I got some great scientists here that have been untapped, and
Okay. So how can we support you in that? Would you like us to set up do you want us to set up a meeting with your PTO? Do you want to give our information to your teachers to have us come visit classrooms, or how can we support you in that?
so I've got a couple of teachers, about 2 to 3, who absolutely love science, and they're
Yeah.
good at it. And so these are grades 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
And and last year, I don't know if you recall, I was trying
Mhm.
to offer a science fair. And because of this pandemic, I ended up having all these awesome science projects just kind of get dusty in the classroom in 3rd grade, and they were all over the place, and the kids were so disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we definitely have to push on their expertise, on these kids' expertise. They do have it.
Sure.
And sometimes we forget, and we're so involved and so overwhelmed with especially just surviving this.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. We have to continue talking about learning. And I think this would be a great way for them to engage.
Could we, so there are lots of things we could do to support you. We could, if
Look
you
at my
want to,
hair.
it looks
Yeah.
beautiful. Excuse me. Woo, my first cough.
That's
Okay.
a bad thing about Zoom. I just constantly want to turn off my picture and fix my hair, which I can only imagine how strong that is for the high schoolers, but.
So we could do a lot of things. We could we could put together a little presentation, send the Zoom to the teachers you want us to send it to, have them join our Zoom, and we could do a presentation for all of them. We could also, they could reach out to us and we could set up a time for us to join their Zoom and do a classroom presentation. We could come to a PTO meeting and do a presentation. We have lots of materials already that we can just send to people. But if you feel like, and we've got the video that we could start off with, or if you think that us being there to do a few minute presentation would push people, just let us know, and we're there.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to these teachers today, and every Friday I send my update, but that's what I'm going to do for sure. One of them is, 2 of them are here in the building doing in person. So I'm going to be like, this is our opportunity to have our kids shine.
Yeah, and they can do the presentation that they did last year.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
And basically what we do is it's just a slide deck. So it's a matter of them, transferring what they did to a slide deck. And Josephina, so that 2nd grade one from Lowry, that was a class experiment they did for life science. They sent it to us and it was so cute. And then we went and talked to the class and we said, hey, do you guys want to present what you learned to the world at the expo? And they said yes. So that's another thing that we could do is, they could present something they're already doing in their class.
I suggest as a starting point, just because of how overwhelming everything is this year and at this moment, there's a slide deck. I just put it in the chat one last time. It's the Q&A that we did the other night. It's what we used to guide our conversation, what we presented. Why don't you share it specifically with those teachers, potentially the whole staff, and let them click through it, because it has the video on it where I just kind of explain the idea behind our STEM Expo. It has the link to the template that the students will use. It has information sheets for caregivers like parents and teachers that are going to try to support kids through this expo. And it's all in that slide deck. And then move forward with a Zoom, like, you know, either they set up a Zoom time or we set up a Zoom time and invite your whole staff, and whoever shows up, you know, gets the information, a question answer session for 5 minutes at a staff meeting on STEM Expo, like however works best. But I know for me, just having access to that slide deck and then being able to click through it on my own might answer enough questions that, you know, they don't even feel like they need to take more time, like they got it now.
No, that's what I was going to do, Peggy. So I'm going to put it in my principal's office update, and it's going to be the weekly focus. So that'll be the first thing they see, and I'll put the links in there because I've already copied that presentation and I have it. So I will do that, but I'm going to then send a separate email to those 3 teachers.
Yeah.
And, come on, what else we can do?
Yeah, and if you want to include like our emails on there and just say we've included them, and so like you know, just reply all and we will do whatever we can to support them.
Okay, that sounds good.
I mean, and we made that slide deck for the kids to do so that any age should be able to do it. And an example I used the other day, I was walking the dog yesterday when everything was kind of melty, and I kept noticing the rivers underneath the snow piles, like in the curbs. And I remember as a kid being pretty fascinated with a water tunnel and put a leaf in one end and watch it like go out to the other end. And then, like, even if somebody just observes that and starts with that phenomenon and does a little investigation, no matter what practice they use, all they have to do is highlight what practice they used, and they've actually got an entire presentation. Of course, you know, we would want it to be thicker and bigger and better and add as they get older and more practiced in it. But this is the beginnings of doing excellent science investigations. So, I mean, we made it so kindergartners could do it with a little help from a parent, like with the slide deck. Inserting images, they can take pictures of the cool things and just use pictures. And then as they go through, they can just explain what the picture is.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many possibilities. And last year, when we were getting ready for the science fair, when we were so excited about it, we even had about 6 teachers sign up to do a science club after school. And they were there to help the kids prepare for their projects. So
Nice.
we are really excited about science, and it's about time. So I'm really excited. I think we've got the right team, as you guys